Hey guys, Jocelyn here from Fantasia Elegance with another wire wrap jewelry project for you. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to make these very cute and very elegant teardrop dangle earrings. And these do use round, dead soft wire and some 6mm gemstones. And they are a lot easier than they look, so stay tuned if you want to learn how to make these. So before we get started, let's go ahead and look at the tools and materials you'll need. I'll be using your standard set of chain nose pliers, round nose pliers, and flush cutters. And as always, I do have a link for the specific ones that I use, the specific brands, and where you can find them in the description section below, so check that out if you're curious. For wire, I'm going to be using dead soft silver filled from Riogrande. You can use any type you like as long as you have some round 20 gauge, and we'll also be using some round 24 gauge and some 26 gauge. You can get by with either just one or the other of these 24 and 26. I just think it looks a little better with both of them. You'll also need a set of ear wires, and I do have several tutorials on making your own. You can check those out if you are curious. And then you are going to need some beads. As you can see here, you'll need 3, and you can use any color you like. For this pair, I used 3 6mm Swarovski pearls in the colors dark lapis and gray. And this design also looks nice, I think, with a 6mm or 7mm in the center, and then slightly smaller ones on either side, like 5mm, so you could also do that. As you can see, it looks very nice to have them all be 6mm though. And the one thing you want to make sure of with your beads or gemstones that you're using is that they will fit over your 20 gauge wire. So just make sure that the hole is large enough for that. And if they aren't, you can purchase a bead reamer to widen up that hole a little bit. And finally, you'll need some metal beads. I will be using 2.5mm silver beads and some 3mm silver beads, and you will need 2 each of those for each earring. So as we get started, go ahead and pull out your 20 gauge wire. We're going to cut some lengths of this. So go ahead and set aside that longer piece, and taking your shorter piece here, we're going to start feeding on the beads. So like I said, I'm going to be using a gray 6mm Swarovski pearl on the outside and a dark lapis one on the inside. There we go. So I'm just going to feed all 3 of those on here. And you want to have them relatively centered, just like so. And I'm going to leave a little space between these 2 and the center one, just like that. And then what I'm going to do is start bending this, because we're going to form a little teardrop with this wire, and we're going to have the beads on the bottom center. And since I've already made one earring here, I'm just going to check that I'm getting this teardrop the same size, because I want these to match, so it needs to be a little bit tighter. And once I make sure it's matching, I will measure it and let you guys know what the approximate measurements should be. There we go. So we've got a teardrop, as you can see, with those 3 beads at the bottom. And you should have it just about 5/8 inches wide there at the widest portion, and then just about 1 inch tall. So now what we're going to do is take these tails, and we're going to form a wrapped loop at the top. So I'm going to put one tail going straight up, right where they cross, and I'm going to take the other tail and form it at right angles so it's perpendicular to that one. And then using my chain nose pliers, I'm going to start wrapping this around, just like that. I'm going to wrap this around 2 or 3 times. Once you have enough wraps, we can just snip that off with flush cutters, and using your chain nose pliers, snug that end on down. So you should have something like that now. And then we're just going to take this other tail and make a simple loop, and that's what we will hang our earring from on the ear wire. So I'm going to take my flush cutters, get a smooth end there, and then pulling out round nose pliers, I'm just going to wrap that on around. So now, go ahead and pull out your longer piece of wire, and we're going to start making all these pretty little swirls and wraps around it. We're going to start at the bottom center middle here, wrapping it around this dark blue bottom center bead. So it's going to sit right there. So what I'm going to do is take my longer piece of wire, bend it in half, just like that, and I'm going to keep pushing it until I have a little bit of a U shape there, right at the bottom. And I want that U shape to sit just around the bottom bead. So I want it to sit there and come between all 3 beads, so I want mine to be a little bit narrower than that. Kind of like that. And if you need to refine it a little bit with your round nose pliers, you can do that as well. Okay, so that's what we want. And then we're going to take each of these ends and swirl it around the gray beads. So I'm just kind of marking here to guesstimate where to put my bend in. Based on where that gray bead is falling, I know I want to start bending it right around here. So I'm just going to start making that little bend there. I'm doing the same thing on the other side so it's symmetrical. So we're getting that sort of general shape there. You might need to adjust it a little bit to make sure that it is staying symmetrical for you. But I think that's pretty good. So at this point what we're going to do is kind of hold that shape on top of your beads, and we're going to start wrapping these tails around the teardrop frame portion. So I want to wrap this tail right here, right above the gray bead, and do the same thing on the other side. So to do that, I'm going to grip right here with my chain nose pliers. So I'm holding those 2 wires together, and I'm going to start feeding this end up through here. So as you can see, we're starting to wrap that around. And you want to keep it close to that gray bead, so I'm going to shift mine down a little bit. There we go. I like to do 3 wraps, so I'll do 1 more here. So as you can see there, we've got 3 wraps on that tail. And we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side now. Alright, so this is what it should be looking like at this point. And now what we're going to do is take these 2 tails, once we've attached our wires together, we're going to start forming all these pretty little swirls. So to do that, I'm just going to bring this back towards the teardrop frame. I'm going to make kind of a little arc shape right there. Just like so. And then take your round nose pliers, and we're going to put in a little loop as well. And I want it to be fairly tight, so I'm going to refine it a little bit with my chain nose pliers here. So we're making that general shape. And then finally, we are going to bring it back around and make a little swirl up at the top here. So let me use my round nose pliers for that. And you want the edge of the swirl to be centered right under that loop. And if you have any extra wire, just go ahead and snip that off. There we go, and we'll do the same thing with the other wire on the other side, trying to mirror image it the best that we can. And go ahead and inspect it and make any little adjustments you need to make sure that it is symmetrical. For me, my left hand swirl wound up a little bit larger, so I'm just trimming that down and tightening it up a little bit. And again, since I'm making this to match to another one, I'm just going to compare it to that as well. And it looks to me like it's pretty close, except these swirls are sticking out more. So I'm going to close those on up a little bit. Alright, so you should have something looking like this. And now we're going to pull out those smaller wires. So I'm going to start with my 24 gauge. And cut a small little length of this. We don't need a whole lot. Let's see. Probably about 1.5 inches would be plenty. So let me just measure that for you guys. About 4 centimeters. And this doesn't have to be exact. We're just going to put a little U-shaped bend in this one here. And with this, what we're going to do is bind these two little swirls to the base wire, to that base teardrop shape. So I'm just going to feed it right through there. So it's going over both of the swirls. And I'm going to start wrapping it around. Actually, I want these to sit a little higher. There we go. I'm just going to start wrapping it around this whole portion here. And then it will overlap with that wrap we made earlier to make the wrap loop, but that's okay, that's what you want. And you want about 3 wraps there. Just like that. See if I can get it to focus a little better. We'll just trim off on the back the ends that we don't need, and find a little place to tuck them in and squeeze them down with the chain nose pliers. So it should be looking like this. Go ahead and pull out your metal beads. We'll start attaching those now. So for some reason my camera decided to not record my attaching of these beads here, so I'll just tell you what I did. I used the 3mm metal beads on these upper portions here, and I attached those using the 26 gauge wire to run through the bead and bind it off here and here on both sides of the earring. And I used about 1¼ inch pieces of the 26 gauge wire to do that. For reference, that's a little over 3 centimeters. And I can show you exactly how I did that on the bottom portion, because we do have a few more beads to add. So I'll just cut 2 more pieces of that 26 gauge wire. So on the bottom we're going to use the smaller beads, the 2.5 millimeters. And we're just going to thread it on that little piece of wire we just cut. So we have that. Oops, that's the finished one. And we want this to sit right in this space here. Just there. So I'm going to wrap these two tails to fasten it on. I'm going to wrap this tail through here. And I like to get a good 3 wraps or so in there. And that's what I did up top here as well. I did 3 wraps there and there. So once you've got 3 wraps in, we can just snip that off. And fasten that tail around on the back. Just smooshing it down with chain nose pliers and checking that there's no sharp bits. So then we're going to do the same thing with this other tail, and we're going to wrap it through this little loop here. And again, once we have about 3 wraps, I'm just going to snip it off and hide the end around back. And we'll just do that exact same thing with the other bead on the other side here to mirror image it. There we go, so that is our earring. All that's left to do now is add an ear wire on top. And for this style, I like to use the ear wires with a little bead on there. I feel like it just mirrors those metal beads that we've already added very nicely, but of course you can use any style you like. If you are curious, I have done some tutorials on making your own ear wires, so you can check those out on my channel. We'll just open it up and slide it on there like that. And of course you can make this a little bit larger and turn it into a pendant as well. You would just put a bail on top of here instead of an ear wire. I do have, so again, a couple tutorials on free bails that you can add on after the fact like that on my channel as well, so check those out if you haven't already. But that is our design. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial and found it easy to follow. Feel free to comment below if you enjoyed making this, if you had any questions along the way, and of course also if you have any ideas for future tutorials. I do take a look at those. So stay tuned for more videos. If you haven't subscribed already, please do that, and make sure you also click that little notification bell. It's right under the video here. Unfortunately, if you don't click that bell, even if you're subscribed, I think YouTube doesn't really tell you or alert you when I post new videos, so make sure you do that. Thank you guys so much for watching, and happy crafting!